सोचते आ रहे हैं मिल्टन।
Welcome back. You're watching Newscentre. 5G implementation is integral to Cisco's plans in India. That's the word coming in from Dave West, president of the China, Japan and Greater Pacific region at Cisco. In a chat with CNBC-TV18's Ashmit Kumar, Dave West also elaborated on the company's plans for India going forward. Listen in.
The 5G implementations are just an extension of the work that we're doing in terms of helping India digitize, deliver services at speed and scale in the market, ensuring that we're making proper investments for helping and socially disadvantaged, connecting the unconnected. All of this is part of the 5G rollout in India. And when we look at sort of our work to date in India, 5G will play a massive role as we look forward.
Let me club this question of 5G with the issue of pandemic. What were your biggest lessons, your biggest takeaways in terms of traction that you managed to get over the pandemic, and then subsequently what that means for companies as they begin to get more familiar with hybrid forms of work style?
Well, the pandemic changed the world. Before the pandemic, we were talking digitization, and people thought of digitization as a buzzword. And through the pandemic, what we realized is digitization is fundamental to a business's success. If you can't see somebody face to face, you've got to be able to still do business with them, transact with them, collaborate with them. The world went hybrid. India went hybrid. In fact, what we saw was India was the fastest adopter in terms of consumption of our collaboration technology. Number 2 in the world for us. Number 1 for me in Asia overall. And so the world went hybrid, and in hybrid, everything changed. Our belief that people could work from home productively, the understanding that that work wasn't something you had to go somewhere to do, that you could work from anywhere. And so hybrid has changed the landscape fundamentally, and we see that it's here to stay.
At a time when people are getting back to physical, where you see people, cars being parked in the parking lots of big companies, you see a lot of movement, people are getting back into their offices, a lot of companies insist that creative processes require the people to be under one roof. I'll ask for your take on that in just the next bit. But before we come to that, do you see this as perhaps a headwind? Do you see perhaps this impacting demand going forward, especially in a geography like like in India?
We don't see it impacting demand. In fact, we see it driving even more innovation. Because when people come back to the office, and not everyone will come back to the office, employees want choice. And they want choice to be able to work wherever they can. Because again, work is not where you go, it's what you do, and you can do it from anywhere.
As far as India is concerned, you mentioned it's one of the high-performing markets for you, fastest in Asia, second fastest overall. When you saw this level of adoption here in a market where originally there was not as big of a footprint, what does that mean in terms of Cisco deploying resources, investing here, looking for people here, having more manpower here? What did that translate into, this increased footprint here in the Indian market?
Well, you know, first of all, we stepped back and we saw how massive the India market is. When you think about the India market, you've got to be able to satisfy at scale for the India market. It's not ones or twos, it's millions that you have to be able to satisfy for. And so the first thing was that we have to make sure that we can satisfy the requirements for the India market. The second thing is that this market is digitizing fast, and it's a very innovative market. And so how workers used our technology, how they used it to collaborate, how they used it to share information, we learned a lot from that. And as a result of all of this, we've been building our infrastructure, our innovation locally in India. In fact, through the process, we launched 2 security clouds to start off. Our Duo Cloud, which helps us around zero trust and access control. Our Umbrella Cloud, which helps us around secure internet gateways or DNS security. And now we're announcing this week, after this interview, our WebEx Cloud. So the collaboration tools we've talked about, we're now bringing them to India and making them available in the India market. So not only did we learn, not only did we see India digitize and advance very fast, but we're also investing and innovating at the same time.
Let me also just get the same question from a slightly different perspective in terms of you've given us an idea of how the customer base here is not in the dozens or the hundreds. We're talking about millions. You also mentioned that a number of technologies being deployed. Let me ask you, for your, from a Cisco perspective, the Indian market in terms of deployment of resources. Can you share a few numbers in terms of what your outlook is going forward in terms of what the investment could be, what the number of people here that you have working for you, what does that number look like? Some guidance.
Well, we're just watching the market, and as demand surges in the market, we'll surge resourcing in the market to help support the demand. And so I think every time we launch a new cloud service, every time we launch a new innovation agenda, we're also meeting that with resources to make sure. You know, we have an incredibly big development center here in India. It's the second largest in the world. 12,500 employees sit in India. And so most of those employees do a lot of our software development. A lot of our innovation comes from the work that's happening there. And as we launch more services, more software services, and new clouds, you'll see us meet that with resourcing to make sure that we can support the India market.
Cisco applied for a pan-India license. They managed to secure that. A lot of questions were asked. What's in the works? What is Cisco planning? So just for clarity, what does that mean for you, having this pan-India license, in terms of deploying it here in the country?
It means we have a local cloud to provide messaging and meeting services across the India market. And so you're thinking, well, what does that mean? Cloud can be deployed anywhere. It means that we have much more resilient capabilities locally in the market. It'll help us with delivering at greater speed, ensuring that the quality of experience, and it's all about user experience, is at its best.
One final question, and this is about the regulatory framework that we have here. India is contemplating a new regime. They've come out with a new draft telecom bill. In that bill, they've included a whole host of services as telecom services. They've clarified that for the benefit of the various stakeholders. The question I want to ask you is just your reflection of this draft regime. Of course, it's only on paper right now. It's not been put into exercise. Just your sense where the new regulatory regime that we have for telecom will also include a regime which includes OTT players, but importantly will also include you. So your quick take on that.
Well, I think everything that we're doing will support us no matter how the new regulatory framework comes out. And so depending on what's mandated and what the government wants to do based off of that regulatory framework, the new cloud services that we're delivering will give us a tremendous amount of flexibility in supporting those requirements. And so we're watching it very closely, and we think we're probably in a good position given, you know, the launching of both the security clouds and now the WebEx cloud. As the requirements come out and as the regulatory framework comes out, we'll be able to hopefully satisfy what the government wants.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Newscentre. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.